Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sovereign Ratio. With Bitcoin touching 35K and talk of a new bull market with spot ETF discussion everywhere, I think it's time to start planning for what's coming up around the halving. Today, I'm going to show you my portfolio plans and an Excel spreadsheet that I've made on how to track it. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave me a comment below, and watch till the end of the video to make sure that you see every pick that I have for the bull run. Okay, so first things first, this is the sheet that I came up with and just a brief explanation of what it is and how I use it. I have things into categories of how much percentage of my total investment that are going to go into different categories. So I have a category here at 28%, a category at 30%, 20%, 15%, 7%, and so on. And what happens is basically we'll take the total dollar amount, multiply it by 28%, and then divide it by however many rows there are in that particular category. So in this case, like this top section, both of these would get 14% of the total investment, which I currently have set up here at $1,000, which obviously changing that field would change the entire spreadsheet. So we're not so much going to look at like entry points because those are unique to the individual, but what I'm going to look at is just kind of the entry points that I've already set in here and kind of like what the ROI would be. And second thing I want to note is that this spreadsheet is based upon a confirmation of the bull run actually moving forward. I think in the interim, it's probably still best to work with Bitcoin until we have around the halving, or we see a dump, or we see a major dump so you can pick up altcoins or whatever. For now, it's kind of a Bitcoin territory. This is more what I'm planning for when either a major dump happens or when the bull run is officially commenced. You'll see here on the top right of the spreadsheet, I have a category that says do not adjust, which gives the value of the token at its previous high and also the value of the token given its previous high and assuming that the low is in the 1618 as a target for the next bull run. Some tokens may not get to the 1618, some may not even get to all-time highs, whereas some may get to a 2618 or a 3618. We don't know. So I figure the 1618 is just kind of a nice average across the board, figuring that. And then on the bottom right here, I have ROI categories for back to all-time highs, and then an ROI category back to the 1618. And that'll kind of give us an idea of, hey, I have this much money. These are the allocations that I'm putting in. This is a reasonable idea of what I could potentially get in the next bull run if I'm smart and make good decisions. All right, so the top token should not come as a surprise to anyone. We're going to take the black bar off of here. And you can see that number one is Bitcoin. I just have all three entries set at 35K. The other way that this spreadsheet works is that it takes the entry and then it divides it into a percentage. Like the first entry would be 30%, the second entry would be 40%, the third entry would be 30%. So for this particular thing, I just shoved 35K in for all of them. It doesn't really matter, but my first pick is Bitcoin. And obviously I think everybody's goal in the end should be to convert altcoin profits into Bitcoin, probably after waiting a year after the bull run, holding Tether or USDC. So in this particular example, like I said, I only put $1,000 total investment in here. The amount of Bitcoin is so small. At that point, I don't have enough decimal points, but essentially the value of that allocation at the previous high would be $277. The value at the 1618 would be $408. Now, if I wanted to invest more, let's say I wanted to invest $100,000. That, as you can see, that dramatically changes the spreadsheet. It's 0.12, 0.16, 0.12 for a total of 0.4 Bitcoin, 27,000 at previous all-time high, 40,000 at the 1618. I'm going to continue using $1,000 because I think that's a reasonable investment for most people. But that is how the spreadsheet works. So while those amounts do look small, obviously if you're investing more money, they would look a lot larger. So my next pick, some might find surprising because I'm sure you're expecting to see Ethereum here. I'm actually going to surprise you right now and tell you that I don't have Ethereum in this portfolio. So we're going to take this off. No fill, and it's actually Chainlink. So I'm looking at 14% Bitcoin, 14% Chainlink. At previous all-time high, $1,000 investment again would be $740 of Chainlink, and at the 1618 would be $1,162 Chainlink. But Chainlink, I believe, is the best altcoin, just me personally, to hold for the next bull run. I'm not saying it's going to have the most profits out of any altcoin, but I think if there's one altcoin, if I could only have one altcoin besides Bitcoin, it would be Chainlink, 100%. And then I do have another one that I kind of wish I could have like four, because if I only could get 4 altcoins, I would be great. I don't even need to have all these others, but I'm just trying to maximize my return in the next bull run. So let's get into the 30% category and see what I've got in there. So if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, the next one should come as no surprise to you. It is Polygon. Now, while Polygon is an extremely hot token, in my opinion, for the next bull run, I am kind of watching things to see if there is another token that might have more use case than Matic. So while this list is pretty much set in stone for me for the next bull run, I am also flexible with it. If I come up to a conclusion that maybe one of the tokens on this list is not going to be as, popular or produce as much return as another one, I'm open to substitutions. But for now, this is what I think. I've got roughly 7.5% of the portfolio going into Polygon, which at the previous all-time high would be worth $296, and at the 1618 would be $456 based off $1,000 portfolio. Polygon has shown tremendous use case and tremendous buy-in from investors and even just companies and organizations that want to use the technology. And I think most people would agree right now that Polygon is a really solid choice for the next bull run. The next token at 7.5% of the portfolio is Solana. Now, Solana is a token that I'm skeptical about just because of all the issues that it's had in the past and the hype that it's had around it and the possibility of it becoming a one-hit wonder like it was in the last bull run. But I'm also starting to see a lot of things from institutional investors having interest in it. And obviously the developer activity is extremely high on this layer 1. So, and it also has a long way to go to all-time highs. And there are a lot of people forecasting way higher than all-time highs. Like I think it was like $300 or something in the last, actually it was $260. I can see on my spreadsheet in the last bull run. People are forecasting like 3K, which I think is ridiculous. If it hit $500, I'd be happy. But Solana back to all-time highs in this $1,000 portfolio would be $863, and at the 1618 would be $1,328, which already in itself exceeds the portfolio initial investment value. Solana, if it does stay relevant and it does show that it has use case, I think is going to be, it could be the next Ethereum, like you've seen people say. At the same time, there's been a lot of controversy around it. So this is more risky in the 7.5% category, but I think it's worth it. All right, so the next token in the portfolio is one of my absolute favorites, and it has a tremendous potential for return in the next bull market. Some people may like it, some people may hate it, but for me, I definitely think it's worth the risk. Just the price it needs to get to be all-time high, like the percentage back to all-time high is ridiculous, and that's Filecoin. The other thing that I've said in the past is that I think gaming and utility tokens are going to be huge, along with AI tokens as well in the next bull run. And Filecoin is the creme de la creme of file storage, whereas Arweave may do some other things that Filecoin does not. I think Filecoin is the one that institutional investors would be interested in the most, and I also think it has the most potential in the next bull run. For instance, back to previous all-time highs, just from the bottom, is approximately 10,000%. That's 100x if you're not following with that. That's a huge gain. So just looking at that, the $1,000 investment, the portion that would go into Filecoin back to all-time highs, $4,128, back to the 1618, $6,972, showing you right there the potential that Filecoin has to make you a lot of money in the next bull run. All right, to round out the 30% category is easily the most controversial one in here and the one that I am most flexible with as far as changing it to something else, because I need to see what the Cardano BTC pair ends up doing. If it continues in a downtrend, it may not be as strong of a contender in the next bull run, but if it does kind of hold its previous lows as far as its valuation and its BTC pairing, then it might be something to consider leaving on this list. But for now, I have Cardano in here at 7.5% of the portfolio. You can see here, $917 back to all-time high, $1,405 back to the 1618, and that's an approximately a 12x gain on that token from the bottom, at least from what we consider to be the bottom. Cardano, there's a lot of people that love it. There's a lot of people that hate it. But for me, I don't really care. What I care about is choosing coins that are going to maximize my return. Cardano had a 125x in the last bull run. If it were to magically do something even close to that again, obviously this would be a fantastic selection. All right, so now we're getting into the middle category here, which is 20% of the total portfolio. And I have 6 tokens, making it around just a little above 3% of the whole portfolio in each one of these. And we're starting off with Uniswap. I would not consider Uniswap a particularly risky token, but I would say I don't want as much of it in my portfolio simply because I don't think it's going to gain as much as some other tokens, even though it could. You never know. Uniswap is obviously the token that is governance of the Uniswap protocol, and it has done very well in previous bull runs. In the last bull run, it got up to $44.98. And the 1618 in this bull run would be something like $70, provided that the all-time high was in. With this $1,000 portfolio, that's $431 to previous all-time high, $670 to the 1618. All right, the next token is one that some people might want to see higher on the list. For me, I'm not really sure. I think I like it where it is at about 3% of the total portfolio, and that is XRP. Obviously, with XRP winning its lawsuit against the SEC, it's probably going to have a nice bull run considering how much it was suppressed in the last bull run. And it is an instantaneous or almost instantaneous payment system. It works, and I don't see any reason to hold any other form of cross-border payment like Stellar Lumens at this point. I think XRP is pretty much the best option that we have. I'm sure there's others in development, but it's also easily the most recognized one that we have. So that being said, back to all-time highs is nothing like super significant. It's 530%, but we're assuming that XRP is probably going to go much higher than all-time highs just because of how much it was suppressed. So in this particular portfolio, the partition would be $162 back to all-time high, $304 to the 1618, probably assuming that it's going to go much higher than that. So my next token in the middle category, it's a little bit more risky, but it's also one of my favorite tokens, is the Graph. The Graph is a utility token that deals with data, kind of like Chainlink, but the Graph deals more with API production than it does with just connection across the entire blockchain, although it does connect things across the blockchain as well. The Graph had a nice run up in the last bull run to $2.88, which would be the previous all-time high. The 1618 sits at $4.50. And I do think, again, I think there's a lot of belief in this token, and I think there's a lot of people that are going to be interested in it during the next bull run. That petition of the Graph would be $981 to previous all-time high, and $1533 back to the 1618 in this $1,000 portfolio. Next up in this category is a little bit more risky token. It's in the gaming space, which I've covered before, is Vulcan Forged. Vulcan Forged, the reason that it's in this portfolio is not necessarily that I'm impressed by what the games are that they're creating. I'm impressed by the institutional investors that are interested in it. I've seen a lot of interest in the token as far as like big names that are like Anthony Scaramucci is in this token, and I see a lot of interest in it. So that's what gets my interest in it. Again, I don't see the product as being fantastic, but again, I'm not looking at the product at this point. I'm looking at its viability to produce gains in the next bull run. That being said, from the entry points in here, again, the entry points that you've seen across this video are very changeable. These are not going to be your entry points, which will ultimately affect the value at the 1618 and the value at the previous all-time high. But these are not outrageous entries for the most part. Some of them are older from when I made this spreadsheet before. But from these entries, back to all-time high, 1,600%. Portfolio valuation, $480 at all-time high, and $834 at the 1618 for Vulcan Forged. All right, next up in the AI space is Singularity, or AGIX. This token had a massive run up whenever AI tokens ran earlier this year. And to me, nothing screams a good pick for the next bull run than when something does that in a bear market. So for me, again, over 3% of the portfolio into Singularity would put value at previous all-time high at $105 and a value at 1618, $167. But again, since this has never seen a true bull run, I would expect this token to have a massive run up if the AI space does what I think it's going to do and far surpass that 1618 valuation. And finally, in this category, here's another one that has not seen a massive bull run, and that's Ocean. It deals in data as well and is a utility token, and I've seen many people that think this is going to do very well in the next bull run. Again, the entry points here, I just pencil whipped like I did with Singularity. That's why the total dollar amounts here on the right-hand column do not appear as large as you would think they are. That's because I just shoved the current valuation in here. That's not really what we're looking at anyway. We're more looking at what the coin selection is and kind of its percentage from bottom to top here in this category here. But again, I think in the end, this is going to average out across all of these entry points and everything to be pretty close, because I've already done this math in advance. When we get down to the ROI category, you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, moving right along into a higher risk category. Some people may not consider this token to be higher risk, but I haven't seen enough from it to consider anything other than that, and that is a layer 1 solution called Caspa. I truly cannot sit here and say that I know a lot about Caspa. I've seen it on crypto bubbles shoot up thousands of % in the last year or so. I don't really know what it is other than a layer 1. I'll be honest, this is a recommendation that I've seen other people make. So for me, if something goes up that much in a bear market, and it has some sort of viability as a layer 1, for me, I think it's worth a very small percentage of my portfolio, which in this case we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 across 15%, so just under 2% of my portfolio. And again, I just pencil whipped the current valuation of 5 cents in here. So the amount here in this column is going to be insignificant. $36 to previous all-time high, $58 to the 1618. We're expecting it to go much, much higher than that. Again, this is a conservative ROI. If it gets more than that, everybody's going to be happy. But I think at the end, when you see the ROI just off of these pencil whip numbers, it's going to be pretty obvious that you can make a lot of money in this next bull run with the right token selection. All right, next up at just under 2% of the portfolio is Arbitrum. Arbitrum was released earlier this year with a lot of hype behind it. It's a layer 2 and ZK Sync type of solution. I think it's a good idea to put a small percentage in. So that's what I've done here, just because it has so much hype and it hasn't seen a bull run yet. And it does offer some sort of solution, even though it's very competitive right now in that layer 2 space with Optimism and Arbitrum and Polygon and all of those different solutions coming out. But I do think this one has a solid at least one bull run in it. So went ahead and put just under 2% of the portfolio with these, again, pencil whipped entries, $105 to all-time high, $157 to the 1618, which to all-time high is basically a 5x. Again, we're expecting it to go much higher than that. All right, y'all, before we get to the next token, if you're appreciating this video, I'm giving a lot of information here. Please hit that subscribe button. Please smash that like button. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you agree with, what you disagree with. Help me get in that algorithm, because I am providing what I consider to be a lot of value in this particular video, and I'm putting a lot of work into it, so I appreciate it. All right, the next token used to be much higher in my portfolio as far as the allocation, and that is Gala Games. Gala Games has a massive, massive potential in the next bull run, but it also has a potential to fail, just simply because of a lawsuit that's recently happened between founders. Now, if that lawsuit ends up being settled civilly and doesn't affect the project whatsoever, I still think that this project has a massive, massive potential upside. And when I say massive, you know, this says 53x. I think it could do even more than that if the hype around the project plays out to be as much as what I've heard. Gala Games definitely is one that you don't want to miss out on, so I would recommend putting a small amount into it. Again, here it's just under 2% of the portfolio, but at those conservative entry, well, the third entry is not conservative at 1.6 cents. We're already past that at this point. It could dip down again. But just on these weird entries here, I've got $674 back to all-time high, $1,087 to the 1618, and I think that is a very plausible valuation. All right, coming in next is Immutable X, or IMX token. This one does have a lot of potential as well. It is a gaming solution, as just like Gala Games and Vulcan Forged that we looked at before. IMX is not necessarily a game itself. It's more of like a base layer for the entire gaming space. I don't see it having as big of a run up as some other tokens, and that's why it's a little bit lower here. I actually think this one is a little bit on the lower risk, but I think the return is also a little bit lower. So I would rather put a little bit more into tokens that have a bigger upside, like Vulcan Forged. But anyway, it is here representing just under 2% of the portfolio with a potential 24x, in my opinion, back to all-time highs. In this particular portfolio with these entries, which may or may not even be accurate at this point, $303 back to all-time high, $287 back to the 1618. That doesn't make any sense. There's an error there somewhere, but anyway, it is IMX for this selection. Actually, y'all, I found the error. I was looking at the KuCoin chart, and IMX had hit $9.50 on the KuCoin chart, which would put the 1618 at $14. So that's $447 for the 1618 instead of whatever it was before. All right, next on the list is Thorchain, or the token Rune, which has shot up tremendously in the last day or two and is way above these entry targets that I have here. So again, I think this will all average out in the end, but right now the price of Rune is significantly higher than all three entries on this page. But from bottom to potential back to all-time highs is about a 21x, and the 1618 would be sitting around $27.50. So for this particular portfolio, $316 at all-time high, $409 at the 1618. Next up, so we've got all these games that we're looking at in the gaming space, Web3 space, but we have to have something to render them, right? So next token at under 2% of the portfolio is Render. This one is another one that has a great deal of interest in it and could have a magnificent bull run starting in 2024. The entries that I have here are far below what the price is right now. That's okay because it's such a small percentage of the portfolio. It'll all even out in the end. Essentially $201 back to all-time high, $319 at the 1618, with a potential back to all-time high of about 30x from the bottom of this market to back to all-time highs. All right, next up at under 2% of the portfolio is GMX, which is the token for the GMX exchange. There's a lot of belief behind this, and quite frankly, I don't know a lot about GMX. I'm taking this one from other recommendations because I've seen some people, a lot of pretty prestigious people in the crypto space say that this is going to be a big one, and it has been moving a lot in this bear market, which is again a good sign that it's going to do well in the bull market. So GMX is sitting here at just under 2% of the portfolio. Again, the entry points are pencil whipped, so the amounts on the right are insignificant, but again, it'll all work out in the end. All right, for the next section, I'm actually going to unlock them all at once and we can look at them at the same time. But the last one in the 15% category is Wilderworld, which if you've been watching my channel is my absolute favorite gaming project. I think Wilderworld has infinite potential. And the only reason that it's in the 15% category is because it is slightly more risky. But I see this one just going to the moon. Honestly, this is not financial advice, but if I was to put money in one gaming token, it would be Wilderworld. And then if I had to pick a second one, it would probably be something a little bit more stable like IMX. Like if you wanted the magic combo, IMX and Wilderworld, I think is a great combo for just a 1-2 play in the gaming space. But Wilderworld, if you haven't seen my video on Wilderworld, I recommend that you go and watch that. The game is absolutely stunning. It runs in Unreal 5. And you would never think that something like that could be in Web3, but it's here, it's real, and they're probably teaming up with Apple VR for it, which is another reason to invest in it. The only problem with Wilderworld right now is acquiring it in the US is pretty difficult. There are a couple ways to do it. If you know how to use CoinEx, you can get it there, or if you know how to use Uniswap, you can get it there. But I would highly recommend getting this token before you can no longer get the token. In my opinion, it's going to be really, really good in the next bull run. These entries here average out to pretty much what the price is now, so this is pretty accurate. 47x back to all-time high, which is $785 in this portfolio, $1,237 at the 1618, and this is one token that I could see easily going to the 2618 or the 3618. I really, really do. This is a very conservative portfolio just to not overpromise and underdeliver for people that are watching. All right, and as promised, I've unlocked all of these in the last category. Some of these are high risk. Some of them I just don't think I want to invest too much into because I don't think the return is going to be huge. But we're going to go through this really quick. All represent about 0.5% of the portfolio each. So we have Cody here, which is a stablecoin producing token on the Cardano network. We have Optimism, which if you have to pick a layer 2, you have the option of Polygon, Arbitrum, or Optimism. I've already chosen Arbitrum and Polygon as bigger parts of the portfolio, but I don't want to miss exposure to Optimism just in case it does something ridiculous. So I have a little bit in there. I have Glimmer here. I've lost a lot of confidence in the Polkadot network, but if Polkadot does survive, I want to have a little bit of Glimmer because I think Glimmer is going to be a much bigger ROI than Polkadot itself. So I would plan on getting a small position in Glimmer, or Moonbeam is the actual name of the token. Next is Paribus, which is a Cardano network token as well. It deals in more like NFT type of stuff. And I've done a video on that, which you can go watch and learn more about that token. But I think Paribus, if Paribus survives, I think Paribus is going to be one of those ones that you could get like 1,000x out of. I really do. Conservatively, I would say probably 20x, just to be honest with the community, but I could see it doing 1,000x. I really could. Next is Illuvium, which is another gaming project that I covered on this channel before. I don't have as much belief in it as I do some of the others like Wilderworld or whatever, but I also want a position in it in case it goes crazy. So I've got that. UFO Gaming is like the meme token of the gaming space, and I want exposure to that just in case it does meme token-like things again. So I have a small position, planning on a small position in that. HBAR is another that's kind of weird for me. I'm not sure how much belief I have in HBAR, but again, if it does something, this is like the if it does something crazy, I want a little of exposure category, and that's what HBAR is. VR is kind of like Wilderworld. It's going to use a virtual reality headset. It's a gaming platform as well. It is very hard to get in the United States. There's only I think one place that you could potentially get it, and that's probably Uniswap. I'll have to check on that. But that is another one that could just have a massive run up, but it could also just fail. So that's why it's only 0.5%. Then we have Kujira, which is another layer 1 that's been recommended. I've seen on 2 different channels now that I kind of looked at one point. I never really did anything with it, but Kujira, if it is going to be popular as a layer 1, then I do want a little exposure to it. And then Superfarm, which is in the gaming space as well. If you've ever seen Elio Trade's channel, you probably know what Superfarm is. It's now called Superverse. I still call it Superfarm because I guess I'm old school. Even though I haven't been in the crypto space for a ton of time, I guess I'm still kind of old school. I don't know. The next one is Injective Protocol, which has just been on an absolute rip this year in the bear market. An absolute rip. And there's no way that I don't want some exposure to Injective. In fact, this is one that I would consider swapping with Cardano. Just to be honest, I might do that. I might just swap this with Cardano because I think this one's just going to rip. And now that I look at it, I'm not sure that I want 0.5%. I think I want more than that. So I might be changing this part of the portfolio. But next is Citus, which is in the gaming space. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it was recommended by Elio lately. And I thought, you know what, why not? It sounds like a decent play. So I put it in the portfolio. It's a very small part. It's a very small portion. Next is Yield Guild Games, which is kind of like you see groups of kids get together and play video games competitively. That's kind of what this is in the Web3 space. It's like a guild of gamers. Don't know too much about it, but I know that some big investors have put money into it, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. So why not? And then ApeCoin. This one's kind of like Injective Protocol. I might consider pulling out the Cardano position and just splitting that one piece of Cardano position in between Injective and Ape and move those two up in the category. But for now, I just wanted to make sure it was on the spreadsheet somewhere because I do want exposure to ApeCoin for the next bull run, just because of what it did last bull run. So those are my picks. Again, I think Injective and Ape, now that I look at this, probably should be a little bit higher. So maybe we'll make some changes there. But in general, that's what I'm looking at. And on the right side here, I'm going to go ahead and uncover this. And this $1,000 portfolio at all-time highs again, I have estimated at $14,000, 14x. And then at the 1618, $22,000, or basically a 22x. And I think that's very realistic with this portfolio. In the next bull run, it could do a whole lot more than that, but I wanted to be conservative and not overplay or overstate. I wanted to under-promise and over-deliver. So the ROI, again, 12 to 13x. At the 1618, 22x or so. So a gain of 13,000 or a gain of 22,000 essentially on these portfolios, which I think is very realistic. Now, again, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you're doing a lot more money, let's say you're doing $10,000. $10,000, significantly higher. Back to all-time high, you're looking at 130K, looking at 225K at the 1618. If you're in the $100,000 category, you could do that too. 1.3 mil. Back to all-time high, and 2.25 mil at the 1618 with this portfolio is just a guess of what I think it'll do. Again, it's not financial advice, but I don't think I've picked anything too crazy here, except maybe like VR is a pretty crazy pick. And maybe like Yield Guild Games and Citus are crazy picks. But other than that, I really don't see any of these just going to zero. I think this is a pretty good portfolio, and I think some of it is completely understated as well. I think it could do a lot more, but a 20x is nothing to scoff at. So those are my selections for the next bull run. Hopefully you learned something valuable, and maybe you agree with some of my selections. Maybe you disagree with some of my selections. Let me know in the comments below, and tell the world what you think about this. And as a final bonus to all of you, I have a list of tokens here that I considered flopping in and out of this particular portfolio. So here's just some ones to note that I have dollar amounts on, like Avalanche, Ultra Games, Tezos, Velis, Aptos, VeChain, Internet Computer, HBAR, which I think is already in there. So that's Algorand. I think that's it. There's some, My Pet Hooligan is not out yet, but that's another one. Cetify Fund, Bytes, I'm not sure what that is, to be honest with you. Shrap and Prime, RDYX, Ronin. Those are just and MC. Merit Circle, that's one I would take a look at too. Merit Circle is hard to get as a US customer. I think it's available on CoinEx though. I probably should consider that one as well. So look at Merit Circle too. So that's it for the portfolio for today. My altcoin picks, obviously a little bit of Bitcoin in there too. If you appreciate the content, please smash that like button, subscribe button, leave me a comment below. I appreciate all of you, and I hope all of you get a 25x or a 20x or whatever like this portfolio states in the next bull run with a little bit of smart investing, a little bit of good altcoin picks. I think you have a good chance. Thanks for coming by. We'll see you in the next video, and safe trading.